The framework for me generally starts with before you can be effective at planning and execution, you have to have a vision for where it is you're looking to go, right? And having a vision for where you want to go oftentimes starts with understanding again where you're at and where you've been, right? And in terms of where you've been, what worked well and what didn't work so well. And in terms of where you are you really clear about the fact? Are you there because you intended to be where you are, or are you where you are today because a lot of things did not go necessarily the right way? And so that reflection and recall to the past is very common where I'll start after having a vision in my head based off the past and the present, then you start to think about, all right, what are the logical steps that need to take place in order to get from point A to point B, and try to break things down into the smallest milestones possible without overdoing it. And so, if I can come up with 3 to 5 major milestones to go from where I am today to where I want to be, that's normally the next step. And then from that, having 3 to 5 milestones, what are the sub steps underneath each one of those milestones? That starts to now give you a workable plan that you can digest. And then now, as you communicate to others what your vision is and the change curve that you want to take the team on, you can break it down so that if you're talking to an executive, you've got a couple of milestones, 3 or 5. But if you're talking to the person who has to actually do the work, you can give them the 3 to 5 milestones and the sub steps to go along with that in order to know what action to take. That's also part of leadership again, right? The micro and macro levels. And so you can see how I tie all these things together. And the last thing is then making sure that you have pretty strong focus on execution of the right things, which sometimes requires a trade-off. So you can have a really good plan, but if you don't have a plan on the things you're going to stop doing in order to do the things that are necessary, that's how sometimes really good planning gets stuck in a PowerPoint that looks pretty, it's got all the right buzzwords, people have nodded their head, but the execution falls apart. And this is where I think if you think about Steve Jobs, one of my favorite quotes from him was, they were equally as proud of all the things they said no to as the invention of the first iPad. Because had they not said no to some other stuff to stay maniacally focused on what the mission was in front of them, they wouldn't have got to the iPad, or it wouldn't have been as good, or would have taken much longer. And maybe a competitor gets there first. And so when you think about strategic planning, you've got to think about the vision and the execution that sandwiches it. And if you plan with those two things in mind, you're more likely to put together a thoughtful plan that has a greater probability of good execution.